Hello everybody, welcome back to another drawing tutorial. This is getting a little bit less Anthro tutorial, but I hope to be correcting that in the future. Anyways, I'm going to get to something that I feel as though every tutorial series of drawing really needs to have at some point. And for nothing else other than everyone seems to be having issues with it. And that's drawing hands, as you could probably guess here. So, drawing hands is very difficult. I'm pretty certain everybody can agree with that. They're just so complicated and weird. I mean, they're just like blocks with just like all these weird things sticking out of them. Like, how on earth is that supposed to work? And then if you do it just slightly wrong, it looks wrong and you can't ever seem to fix it. Like, I think everybody knows that feeling of just like a hand that's just slightly out of place or just slightly wonky. And so it's just, ugh. And there's very good reason for that. It's basically that we're very hand focused as a species. So we have to know what hands look like, and we know what hands look like. I mean, we see ours all the time. We have to know how they're shaped and what they're doing just so we have hand-eye coordination. And so like a perfect example is we don't think our fingers are longer than they actually are, so we don't miss stuff thrown at us. So we know exactly the size and shape of our hands, but we know it subconsciously. Like, you can't just say the measurement of your hands exactly. It's all this subconscious feeling you have. So that's why hands can be so difficult to draw, is because you have this feeling of what they're supposed to look like. But we're not in the strict hand business, we're in the Anthro business, basically. And you have a lot more free range with how stuff is formed, right? Wrong. Mostly wrong. Well, you can do paws and super stylistic stuff. Take, for example, just this for a hand. Oh geez, I don't even know what's going on here. While you can get things really stylistically, this is really haphazardly thrown in. It still ultimately has to be a hand. Like, this is pretty much a bear claw. It's not really a hand so much, but it follows some basic principles that I'm going to be outlining here. And in this tutorial, we're not going to be going about how to draw a hand. We're going to be going about the basic building blocks needed to know how to draw a hand. In the end, once I'm done with this tutorial, I just want you to draw them a bunch. Like, getting this out of the way right now, there's no 3 easy steps on how to draw hands that you can use. It's purely a case of knowing a couple of basic building blocks, and then you just have to do it a lot. I'm sorry, there's no easier way to do it here. So I'm going to give you the building blocks, I'm going to give you all the tools you need, but in the end, you have to fill a sketchbook with these freaking things just so you know what you're doing. Even I'm not certain what I'm doing all the time, and I've been drawing them non-stop for a week straight, these couple weeks ago. So let's get started. I have 4 examples here. I just mostly have them here to show and to point out things that I'm going to be talking about. But really, we don't need to have them. So I'm actually going to minimize these and kind of put them aside just so I can... Whoa, what happened there? Oh, that's actually very strange. It suddenly went crazy. So I'm going to put these aside and we'll come back to them later. But I'm just going to be kind of pointing out some things that you should know and the building blocks that you're going to need to know. So what is a hand? A hand is basically a square-ish shape, a little bit oblong. So you can imagine the square in the back here, kind of connecting in the back. So basically that type of shape. And in the front is going to be a ball. Attached to the ball is going to be a cylinder or a triangle-like shape. On the back of the square are going to be a bunch of balls as well. So should we just make these full balls? And then in the front you just have this very large parabola shape. There you go. You have a hand. I'm actually going to erase this a little bit because I realize I put this all in the same layer and that doesn't quite work the way I want to go. There you go. You have this kind of this parabola shape going on. Now, that looks roughly like a hand, doesn't it? So let's break this down a little bit. This is obviously a closed hand, much more reminiscent of this style right here. But I'm going to break down what's going on. The square shape is your palm, obviously. It's your palm, the back of the hand, so this front bit is the inside of your hand, the back bit is the back of your hand, things like that. And you should know what this looks like by the back of your hand. Pause for laughter. Going on. The thing in front is this huge padding for your thumb. You may not have really noticed it before, but if you kind of take a moment and feel your palm, you'll notice that the base of your thumb is a lot thicker on your hand than the rest. That's mostly so padding so you can hold things easier. Also for grip strength, you have a large muscle there to help control your thumb, because your thumbs are very important to being able to use your thumbs. This is obviously your thumb. It's very simplified. This whole thing is very simplified. And up here are the rest of your fingers. So to start with the building blocks of how this works, let's start with the fingers, because that's kind of where you're going to be getting the most amount of difficulty. So the fingers work with a very simple rule, and that's every segment of your fingers come in 3 segments. Every segment is twice the size, or is the size of the 2 previous ones combined. So, we do this, then we do this. I actually made this far too long now I'm looking at it. But that's why we're here, is just to edit stuff. I did this very, very quickly, so don't blame me. Actually, yeah, you can't blame me because I'm the one who did it. Don't be afraid to just mess around with them to see if it looks right. So this segment up here is going to be the tip of your finger. So if we just put down 4 little things. Now the tip of your finger, there's nothing else here. So the second part is pretty much going to be double the size of the tip of your finger. So that's the middle part of your finger. Should be roughly double the size of the tip of your finger. So this is this size times 2 equals this. But for the base of your finger, now remember this is in the back, so we're not even going to be seeing this. So like the base part of your finger, the first part of the digit, is going to be the size of both of these. So this is going to be the same size as this. Now what does that mean is that you could put in your first part of your fingers to be roughly at the middle, a little bit before the middle, and I'll get into explaining why that is later, but it's going to be roughly the middle, cutting your fingers in half. So if we put this down, so you have the rough shape of your hands. Now it doesn't quite look right, and there's a very good reason for that. Mostly because I don't have these spaces in between your hands, because if you're holding your hands completely together, they look very awkward like that. So generally your hands will be a little bit relaxed, and you'll have this space in between, and will kind of splay them out slightly, much like I have pointed out here. And oftentimes if you see yourself drawing like very thick fingers, like you don't know why, but your fingers look really, really fat and really wide, it's because you're not giving them any space in between. Because right here, where they touch the palm area, the base of your hand, they say this is where your finger connects. Your next finger isn't directly next to it. Your finger is actually a little bit to the side, and there's a space in between it. The same goes for all your fingers. And if you don't take that space into account when you're drawing hands, then it looks a little bit wrong. Now, if you're doing much more stylistic hands, then you can completely ignore this. This is focusing a little bit more so on what your hands would actually look like. But it's important to know what hands actually look like in order to make other styles of them and have those other styles look right. Because you have to fool people into believing that it's a hand or a paw or a claw or anything that you're having. You still have to fool them into that, other than putting it on like an end of an arm. If it's just like a shape on the end of an arm, it's going to look very strange. I mean, if you're drawing a monster, then you're set. You don't really have to bother doing this at all. What are you even doing here? Go draw monsters. That's awesome. So I'm actually going to erase this, and I'm going to flip the hand over. So now we're going to look at the back of the hand. So doing the same shape that I did before. So this palm, then the base of the hand. Now this is very, very rough, but that's because I like doing sketches very, very rough. Sorry about that. So we have the back. Now let's redraw in those circles. Now these circles are your knuckles. And it's important that you add them in because they, for one, can let you space things out immediately before you put the fingers down. And two, your knuckles are always there. Like, no matter how you have your hand, you always have either a divot or a bump for your knuckles. It's just the way that the skin works. So they're always going to be visible. They're always going to be there. So let's make use of them. Since we have the knuckles, we can make this space in between, which you see me doing here. So we can do this correctly. And then we can start putting down stuff. Now, one thing I kind of failed to do here with the knuckles is I kind of didn't give them an arc properly. I decided to make this a little bit bent downwards, but it ultimately got rid of the arc. Normally, you would see this. It's like this arc at the top of your hand. I have it here, I have it here, I have it there, I have it there. It's just a natural arc that your hands form because your pinky starts a lot lower than the rest of the other fingers. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to actually have that here. Now I'm going to have this hand kind of doing a weird shape, but that's just so I can help illustrate this a little bit better. So if we do this arc, which gets a lot more extreme as we go outwards, then we do the next set of digits, roughly, that's so much distance back, and then the last set of digits. Now I actually spaced these out wrong because I did them backwards. Normally you do them from the base of the hand outwards, because that way you can actually get them correct. No, I don't make stuff up as I go. Y'all are crazy. So we have this arcing shape now. You might be thinking to yourself, well, why on earth did we do that? Well, even though the fingers are all splayed out, we have to have them in the correct proportions. So to have you do this fan shape first, it kind of guarantees that things will look correct. So now that we have the spaces in between, the fan out, now we can start to kind of build the fingers. So, first digit's in, that's great and all. Second digit in. Now the second digit's going to be longer. Your middle digit's going to be your longest digit. I started that next to the other one. I completely disregarded my own spacing. Oh, I am a terrible person. But your middle digit is going to be your longest digit. Now, this one is seen from the top, so you don't have that view from the side like you do here. Imagine if these were boxes, just a series of boxes attached to each other. You would see a lot less of the bottom of this digit. Yeah. So it would look a lot thinner. Then you have this next one, which we're going to start giving a little bit of a curve to it. Which, same situation going on here. While we may see a little bit of the box, it would be a lot less. Then you have the pinky, which everyone always forgets about the pinky. We're going to give this thing kind of an extreme curve and break the fan that I had made before. And then the thumb, if we imagine this ball and shape down here, would be roughly out into this direction. So if I thicken out the outlines to this, you can kind of see that this is a hand, or at least vaguely a hand shape. I can go through and I can refine this to make it look proper, but I mean, this is a tutorial. It's not really meant to make amazing artwork. It's made to kind of show you how to do things. Especially this tutorial where all I'm doing is just showing you how to get started with it. So, erasing this one. The last thing I'm really going to get into is the structure of the fingers themselves. As I kind of alluded to there, they're pretty much just a box shape. So, I have this. Ooh, it's a box. It's so amazing, right? I know, it's a great box. Then you can put another box attached to it. Roughly, half the length. And then one more box. Roughly half the length again. And you put little ball joints in between them. And then one larger ball joint at the base. A little bit higher than that. Looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? Well, let's kind of do another one. So let's start with the ball joint down here. then throw in a box. Ball joint. Box. Ball joint. Box. It's just fingers. Like, this is exactly how their structure is basically formed. If you ever find yourself having difficulty drawing a certain pose or a certain hand, just break the form down. I mean, this is very, very time consuming as far as fingers go, but it can be very, very useful if you're really struggling with a certain design. I don't know, maybe this finger is going to be pointing outwards again. And then the pinky likes to follow the ring finger as much as it can. I don't know if you've ever tried to... I remember this one game where you'd pin your ring finger down on a table and have to lift the different fingers. Something along those lines. And it was incredibly difficult to actually manage because your pinky just likes to follow your ring finger. The pinky is a very forgotten finger. It's just like the little brother just follows everything that the older brother does. So, and then you have a giant ball joint for the thumb, giant square, another ball joint, another square. I didn't need to do that line there. And then we just simply connect them. There you go. Now, I made the pinky incredibly thin and tiny, but you still get the idea. I mean, if you break down the shape of the hand, you can get it to work pretty well in your favor. And notice how I still kept this arc going throughout. Wow, it did kind of dip down in the middle there, but that's just because the middle finger decided to do something kind of weird. So, there you have it. This is supposed to be a much faster tutorial than normal, mostly because in the end, like, you just need to draw hands a lot. There's only so much that you can read and so much you can learn about drawing hands before actually doing it that will help. At a certain point, you're just reading the same information over and over again, and unless you put them down, you're not going to get that muscle memory that you're going to need. So, with this, I'm going to end the tutorial off for the week. As a side note, for the end of this one, I'm actually going to be probably moving over into a different program starting next tutorial. I'll be sure to do a video and upload that, just to kind of explaining how the other program works, much like I did at the beginning of this series, just so you knew what all the buttons I was clicking were. So expect that in the future. If you liked the video, then feel free to try it out and show me what you make. Although with this one, it's more so a rough guideline, so I can't expect you to have a whole lot that you'd make with it. But still, nonetheless, it's awesome if you learned anything while you were here. If you have any suggestions for future tutorials, please leave me a comment. My email's at the end of the video as well. You can just send me anything you want and tell me what you'd like to see in the future. And as always, have a wonderful day. Goodbye.